Okay. I think we have, we'll keep admitting some people. So it's just about 10 o'clock and I'll keep an eye on the waiting room in case anybody else shows up, but I think we can get started. So welcome everybody. Welcome to another preservation conversation. Just before we get started, to let you know that this conversation is being recorded. So if you do not want your face up on YouTube, you can turn your cameras off. And we do ask that you please keep your audio muted, just so it cuts down on background noise. And we're all able to hear what Jen has to say. So thank you all again for joining us. My name is Erin Kelly. I'm the Associate Director of Preservation Massachusetts. And we are so very excited to host today a conversation with Jenn Doherty. Jenn Doherty, as many of you probably do know, is the new Local Government Programs Coordinator for the Massachusetts Historical Commission, excuse me, and probably one of the people that we, a position that we at Preservation Massachusetts utilize quite a bit. And as Jim and I were just saying to Jen, we apologize for all of the emails she's probably getting because we refer her so much. So
You've
just
got
a little
pretty
bit
good crowd, Erin.
I know. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. As I said, this conversation is being recorded and it will be posted to Preservation Massachusetts website and our YouTube channel. So again, if you don't want to be have your face on YouTube, you can turn your camera off. Throughout the course of the conversation, I'm going to turn it over to Jen. She's going to do a little presentation. If anybody has any questions during the course of the conversation, we encourage you to use the chat feature to put those questions in. And then at the end of the conversation, at the end of Jen's presentation, I'll moderate some questions back and forth. But again, we do ask that you please keep your lines muted to cut down on background noise. If anybody has any issues, or technical issues, you can either send me a direct message or just something in the chat. I do apologize. We did have a very last minute issue with the link, so apologies if the previous link wasn't working, but hopefully everybody who wanted to be on today is able to be on. So I guess I'll just do a very brief introduction for Jen. As I said, Jen is the Local Government Programs Coordinator for the Massachusetts Historical Commission, and she joined just this summer. So she has been doing an awful lot in the very short time she's been with MHC, but this is not Jen's first rodeo with preservation. She did work as a preservation consultant and also for the city of Framingham. I'm sure she'll tell you all about that. So we're just really excited to get to know Jen and her new role, what she's doing at MHC, and be able to ask her some questions and hopefully connect everybody here to a tremendous resource and great partner in preservation, Jenn Doherty. So Jen, I'll turn it over to you and take it away.
Great, thank you, Erin, and thanks for Preservation Massachusetts for hosting me today. So yeah, my name is Jenn Doherty. I am Local Government Programs Coordinator here at MHC, and I've been here since about the beginning of August, end of July. A little bit about me. I grew up in Hopkinton and I now live in Westboro. So I've lived in Massachusetts pretty much my whole life, except for college. I do have master's degrees in historic preservation and regional planning. So I kind of have a background in a little bit of everything that impacts historic preservation. And I've also, at this point, now that I'm at MHC, pretty much worked on all sides of historic preservation issues. As Erin mentioned, I worked as an independent consultant for many years, working on survey and inventory, preservation plans, National Register nominations, all those great things that communities do. I also worked for the city of Framingham for about 6 years. Hi, Lynn, I see you there. As their preservation planner, staffing their historical commission and historic district commission. And obviously now at this point, I'm here at MHC. I also serve on my historical commission here in Westboro and am currently the chair. And also I'm currently working for our CPA exploratory committee here in Westboro. So I kind of have a little bit of everything. I know a lot about a little bit of everything. So most of the questions that folks direct to me, I have some experience with and can give you usually a pretty quick answer. So I'm going to just do a brief presentation about some of the programs that I do here at MHC, so you can get a little bit better idea of what I do. And if you have questions or comments about anything, you kind of know what you can ask me. So obviously I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Anything related to local, municipal, historic preservation issues, bylaws and ordinances, demolition delay, local historic districts, just general commission management questions. I can answer certainly all of those questions. You can always reach me by email. I'm pretty quick to respond to that. I have a remote phone number that's up there for when I'm home, which I am home most of the time. And then you can always reach me at the main line at MHC. One thing I like to tell folks, when you do reach out to us at MHC, please try and provide as much information as you can. The number of people who will call us asking about a property but not tell us where the property is, we can't really answer your questions at that point, but if you can give us a property address and a Macross ID, that's always very helpful. And if you have a question that you think I might not be able to answer or you're really not sure, you can always send a really detailed email to the main MHC email address, and it'll be directed to the staff member that can most appropriately answer the question. So I also manage all of our guidebooks that we have. And so these are, again, written guidebooks that cover some of the major topics of historic preservation, some of the issues that a lot of commissions come up with. Preservation through bylaws and ordinances provides an overview of all of the pretty typical bylaws and ordinances that communities might adopt relating to historic preservation. Demolition delay goes into more detail on adopting a demolition delay bylaw or ordinance. Establishing local historic districts is essentially the same thing, but for local historic districts. We do have a guidebook for historic district commissions that provides more detail on administering those, including applications, the review process, and design guidelines. And then we also have a detailed preservation planning manual, which provides sort of a more general overview of historic preservation, but then also talks a lot about how communities might plan for their historic resources and develop a historic preservation plan. I'm sure some of you have seen the workshops that I posted on the Listserv and via other emails. We are currently doing workshops virtually, but we'll go back to hosting some of them in person, so doing a mix of in-person and virtual workshops once it's a bit safer. So a lot of variety of workshops on all sorts of different topics, but I'm always interested to hear what commissions are looking for, what they're looking for guidance on. One of the big ones that we're hoping to do in the spring is around project review, Section 106 and historic tax credit review, because I know that's something that a lot of commissions struggle with. But if there's anything else that you are interested in, certainly let us know and we can see if we can create a new workshop or work the topic into one of our existing workshops. And so under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40C, communities that are looking to establish a local historic district must send a copy of their preliminary study report to MHC. And so I'm the person that receives those. So I'll review them for completeness and then I will schedule them for the commission meeting. And then I prepare presentations and present the proposed districts to the Massachusetts Historical Commission for their review and comment. So these were some of our recent projects or recent local historic districts, local designations from our November meeting. I've been presenting districts at pretty much every meeting that we've had for the past few months. I also am our Certified Local Government Program Coordinator here for the state of Massachusetts. And for those who aren't familiar with the CLG program, it is an agreement between the National Park Service, MHC, and the local community. And it really just acknowledges that that community has a higher level of preservation knowledge and ability. Here in Massachusetts, it does require that your community has a local historic district. And so what does CLG status get you? Well, you have increased eligibility for survey and planning grant funds. It allows you to initially review proposed National Register listings, and it allows you some more involvement in the regulatory review and compliance process. We're also going to be doing some more targeted CLG trainings in the spring relating to some of those issues and some of those areas that the CLGs handle. So right now in Massachusetts, we have 27 CLGs and we are always looking for more. So if you are interested in becoming a CLG, again, you do have to have a local historic district, but you can always reach out to me and we can get you started on the application process. And so finally, I do help manage the survey and planning grant program. Unfortunately, our deadline for this was on Monday, but I did just want to highlight it for folks for the future, for next year, if you're thinking about doing any kind of survey work. These are federal funds that we receive from the Historic Preservation Fund. And again, those CLGs are eligible to receive a smaller 10% pool of funding. So it makes you a little more likely to receive one of these grants. They are 50-50 reimbursable matching grants. You expend the funds and then receive 50% back from MHC at the end of the project. One of the big things, you do not have to have your match in hand when you're applying, just because the funding cycle is off. You just need to let us know that you are planning to ask for it in your budget. And so you can see the timeline down there. And these grants are used for survey and inventory projects, preservation plans, design guidelines, National Register nominations, and CLGs can also use them to prepare historic structures reports. So that's all I have for now. That's about all I do, but it is a lot. A lot of what I do is really just answering questions from communities as they come in. But again, you can always reach out to me with any questions via email or phone. And again, provide as much information as you can when you do contact us. So that's all I have. And Erin, if you have questions for me, I guess we can do that now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Jen. It's yeah, it always seems like you know, when you actually write down what you do, it may not seem like a lot, but there's always so much more. And I can very much you know, empathize, you know, from our standpoint, when we get asked questions at Preservation Massachusetts, you know, having as much information as possible, you know, where's the property located? Do we have an address? That's very helpful, but also, you know, being a resource for questions, because so much it's, you know, we'll get questions at Preservation Mass that should be directed to you. I think there's just so many great organizations. And I think sometimes if people aren't familiar with who is what and the different roles we all play, you know, often working together, it's just very important to be like, oh, you need to go talk to Jenn Doherty. So, and we have a couple of questions, and hopefully we'll get some more, but I actually had one that was emailed a couple of weeks ago that was specifically about, it was from the Topsfield Historical Society, and how can a small nonprofit historical society without paid staff but owns historic structures find best practice information for periodic cleaning of an antique structure and care of artifacts and historical record paper archives that are contained within? Any suggestion on best practices?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think the first half I can certainly tackle. I like to direct people to the National Park Service's website. They have a lot of technical briefs and preservation briefs up there that really get into the details of how you should treat certain materials, how you should clean them, how you should maintain them. And it provides a lot of information really, you know, about specific kinds of materials. And that's obviously, it's the National Park Service. It really is kind of the best practice as high as you can go. In terms of documents, I'm a little less familiar with that. I deal with buildings, not so much collections. But I think there are a couple organizations in the state that do deal more with document kind of conservation. Within the Secretary of State's office, we do have the state archives. So you might consider reaching out to them to see if they can provide any guidance.
Yeah, I do believe I'm drawing a blank on the name of the organization, but I do believe there is an organization, a group who is more along the lines of, you know, archival, state library, archival documentation conservation. And if I can think about it, I will respond. This was from Bill Whiting of the Topsfield Historical Society. So Bill, I will follow up with you. And
can I just add one piece to that?
Hello.
Hi. We were specifically interested in things that our little type of organization needs to do as it relates to global warming. We know there are issues about increased water, violent storms, change of temperatures. We have an antique house that we removed heating from because we had busted pipes. So it seems to me that there are some very specific things related to global warming that even us small nonprofits with no staff ought to be thinking about.
Have you checked in with CoStep?
Nope.
Okay, so here in Massachusetts, they are sort of an affiliation of nonprofits, several different municipal and state organizations, and that is sort of specifically what they're dealing with. It's basically emergency management for cultural resources. I forget what the actual acronym stands for. It is COSTEP,
Okay.
but that is what they do.
Okay, great. Now I have had some contact and attended some of their sessions, so thank you. That's a good help.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, moving on. We've had a few more come in. So and then yes, so Jeff and Stacia, circuit riders for PM, the organization who I think they are also involved with CoStep as well. It's the State Historical Records Advisory Board. And this is in the chat. And if we have, also I should have said, if our question and answer period goes longer, it's going to go longer than the hour that we have. I will save the chat, and any questions that we don't get to, we will try to, collaborate with Jen on getting answered, and we'll post the chat on our preservation conversation page on our website. So that's there. So Jen, this pertained to the guidebooks that you were talking about. Where are the guidebooks available? Guidebooks available? Are they on the MHC website, or are they for purchase?
Yep. So some of them are on the MHC's website. We do have a publications page, and they're listed there. If the one that you're looking for is not there, send me an email or give us a call, and I can either email you a digital version or mail you a hard copy for whatever you're interested in.
Great. Okay, one more question. If we're thinking of using exterior lights to highlight the architectural details of our building's facade, I'm concerned that the installation not hurt the facade, but help highlight it. Any recommendations?
Yeah, I would, again, look kind of to see what the National Park Service has put out. And then I think Steve mentioned Denver, and then that they're also doing a project in Lowell. Really looking for what other communities have done. Architectural lighting and uplighting is pretty popular now as a way to enhance your building. So I think there's a lot of different references that you can look to around the country in terms of that. And you can always do lighting that doesn't actually go on the building. Putting in floodlights on the ground or something like that is obviously not going to impact the building. So.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve, for jumping in with that. Great recommendations. Another question. Can you tell us a little more about the role of the LPC, local project coordinator, in a small town for a project?
So that's usually relates to grant funding, and it's that person is kind of the point of contact between MHC and the consultant when going through a grant. So they're the ones that's kind of organizing everything, that is making sure that procurement is moving along, that the project is moving along, scheduling meetings between MHC and the consultant in the local commission. It's really just the local organizer for one of our grant projects.
Here's another great question about from the Cape. We're always interested to hear about any unique regulations or zoning bylaws that support historic preservation, and unique historic districts too. What's the best way to share that type of information in Massachusetts?
So I have a couple that I'm hoping to add, or at least update, to our bylaws and ordinances guidebook. But I'm also planning to do a workshop that does focus more on some of those unique zoning ordinances and bylaws that may not necessarily be historic preservation related, but are supportive of historic preservation. So, looking at things like accessory dwelling units or historic reuse bylaws, things that are more geared towards in a sense, sensitive development rather than necessarily historic preservation, but that do still support historic preservation in the community. So if your community does have any interesting bylaws or ordinances, certainly send them to me. But I do try and kind of keep an eye out for things that folks have that come up that are more unique bylaws like that, that aren't, you know, a typical 40C historic district or a local landmark designation.
Being able to, I think one of the best things, I know we were talking about it a little bit before we actually officially started the preservation conversation, but the preservation listserv is just such a great way for people to share information all across the state and not have to feel like they're working in a vacuum. And also, you know, if, you know, don't reinvent the wheel if somebody else already has tackled a similar issue, being able to, you know, get that information from either you or put the ask out to the preservation listserv. And hopefully the lists, you know, you said Michael Steinitz is still maintaining the listserv for right now, but soon you'll be wearing that hat probably too.
Yes, it'll be coming over to me soon. So yeah.
Wonderful. That's great. I know shortly after you joined MHC, you put out a survey on Listserv asking, just saying, you know, what sort of information, what sort of workshops do people want, what are they looking for, which I thought was really, really important because, you know, we can, you know, from our standpoint, at least, you know, speaking from Preservation Massachusetts standpoint, you know, we know the issues that we're getting asked about, but what do the local commissioners and local advocates, what do they really see? Where do they see their needs being? You know, Bill Whitaker brought up the issue of climate change impacting historic structures and how should we be planning for conservation and, you know, maintaining our historic buildings when storms are getting worse, summers are hotter. Did you have any sort of really interesting takeaways from that survey? Like things that you didn't even have that really weren't even on your radar, but people were overwhelmingly asking for you know, workshops on or more information on. So any interesting takeaways from your survey?
I don't think there was anything that was sort of shocking or, you know, different or unexpected, I guess. But like you said, a lot of it is moving more towards sort of the nitty-gritty details of these new issues that we have coming up. So one of the big ones is obviously climate change, adapting historic buildings to green technologies, you know, using things like solar panels, adding those to historic buildings. And then, you know, some of the more technical questions or more technical sides of historic preservation, you know, dealing with historic district review and alternative materials, for example, is one that I know a lot of communities struggle with. You know, you always get those applications for hardy plank and AZEC, and, you know, when do you approve those? Do you approve those? I think that was one of the ones that frequently came up. But yeah, just a lot around sort of the green technology side of things and climate change and, you know, some of the more modern issues as they're impacting historic preservation. You know, I think obviously in Eastern Massachusetts, many of the communities are built out. You know, so at this point you are rehabbing a historic building. You're probably, you know, that's one of the key ways that you're saving your community. And so making them as, you know, modern as possible and adapted to these newer technologies is really important for a lot of communities.
Very, very, very well said. We did I think it was after our 2019 State Preservation Conference, we did our very first webinar in late 2019 about climate change, and it was very well attended at the conference, but that was the first webinar that we ever recorded, and it's on our website, and I think it's something that we really need to look at updating, especially after the year that we've seemed to have had. One more question from Jeff Gagne, our circuit rider. Besides MHC, MPPF grants and CPA funds for communities who have adopted CPA, can you speak a bit about potential sources of funding to support local preservation initiatives? This is one of the most common requests for help that we circuit riders get from local preservation advocates.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, and obviously it's one of the most questions that we get to. I, you know, generally point people MPPF, CPA, and then I know you all have at Preservation Mass have your new grant program as well. Those are kind of the big ones that I highlight. And then, as I'd also noted, the survey and planning grants are really important for communities that are looking to do more sort of research and documentary kind of work. Beyond that, is there a lot? There's not a lot. I think we all know that, unfortunately. The National Trust does have a number of grants. A lot of times they tend to be more specific for specific kinds of buildings. But unfortunately, you know, sources are limited for this kind of work and this kind of funding.
Yes, if we had all the money in the world, all the preservation problems would be solved.
Yeah.
It's the number one question.
Yeah.
All right, so the folks from Otis asked for Jennifer's contact information. Jennifer shared her contact information at the very beginning of her little presentation. So if you watch the recording, it would be there. Unless Jen, do you want to drop it in the chat? Okay.
I can pop it up on here real quick. Yeah, so
there's Jennifer's contact information.
Yeah. Again, email's pretty quick to reach me. And then I'm only in the office one day a week, but I do check that voicemail. Otherwise, remote, you can reach me at home.
Fantastic. Thank you. So another question from I should say a former circuit rider out in who's
I was going to say, Aaron, don't forget Steve Moga.
I'm not forgetting Steve Moga, who is actually he's watching this with a class. So we have more people than are actually. So we're actually we have a class joining us today. So Steve has asked, some Northampton residents are interested in learning more about an ordinance to help be able to designate individual landmarks. What are your thoughts on this idea and what might it take to implement?
Yeah, so some communities do have this. They have a local landmarking ordinance. Newton is a big one that comes to mind. I believe Cambridge has one. And there's a couple other communities that have one as well. It generally works the same way as a 40C local historic district. However, it does not have the sort of formal state legislation behind it. So there's no state enabling legislation for these landmark districts. It's really whatever the community decides to do. So they usually will sort of use as a threshold properties that are listed on or eligible for the National Register. Can be designated as a local landmark, and then they have whatever their local landmarking process is, whether that is still kind of preparing a study report and submitting it to town meeting or city council for final approval. And then they will kind of follow the same guidelines as a 40C historic district, where you're reviewing changes to the exterior of a property visible from a public way. So there's certainly a number of communities out there that have them. You can do it. There's no enabling legislation. And I think, I don't know if we have sort of a, example bylaw or ordinance, but some of those other communities are certainly a good place to look for them as well.
And Steve from Lowell asked, does Somerville have individual landmarking ability? Do you know if they have that as well?
I don't know if they do, but they tend to actually Somerville is famous for their numerous 40C individual districts. So they do go through the process for a lot of individual properties. I believe they have over 100 individually designated 40C districts. So that's what they tend to do more than local landmarking. So.
Yeah, each town in Massachusetts is unique, that's for sure.
Yes. Yes.
With so much of preservation it is very, very reactive. I'm sure you get the questions, we get the calls. There's usually something that's going to be happening imminently to whether a historic building or a neighborhood, or there's something that's kind of driving a reaction. So do you have any advice for, commissioners, local advocates on the best way to try to work to be proactive? We know preservation takes an awfully long time, but are there any, good pointers or, some good advice that you would give to commissioners and local advocates on how to be proactive in your community, knowing we're always going to be reactive? It's the nature of our job. So,
yeah. I think there's sort of two big things. The number one for me is for local preservationists, historical commissions, historic district commissions to really connect with the decision makers in your community and a lot of the other boards and commissions in your community. So for instance, when I started in Framingham, I found that the two commissions were really sort of disconnected from the processes and what went on. And I think most communities find that, you know, something goes to planning board, something goes to conservation commission, and then it suddenly shows up on, you know, the historical commission's agenda, and you're kind of like, well, what is this project? It's already been approved, and, you know, what are we doing here? So I think working to really closely kind of establish a relationship between the different boards in your community, with your board of selectmen or your mayor and city council, is very important. And then it really involves you in the conversation, and people will start to come to you ahead of time when they say, oh, wait a second, you know, this project is coming to planning board and there's a stone wall that they're looking to demolish, or, you know, this historic house they're looking to get rid of. They start to come to you a lot sooner, and you really have more of a voice in the conversation. So I think that's really important for communities or for local preservationists, is to establish those links within the community. And even if it's not, you know, going to all their meetings or, you know, whatever. I know for most communities now, you can sign up to receive different boards, agendas, and minutes in your email. And that's kind of a great way to do it. You can kind of keep an eye on what's going on these other boards and commissions, especially if you don't have a lot of planning staff at the local level. That's kind of a good way to kind of keep up on what's going on. And then I think, you know, the other thing is try and do some preservation planning. You know, there's preservation plans out there in a lot of the larger communities. They're, you know, 100 pages long and, you know, done by consultants and, you know, really big documents. But even if you can do something small with your commission, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we had the Western Mass Historical Commission Coalition meeting where we talked about preservation planning at the local level. And there were some commissions that just had, you know, a 2-page document that was kind of things that they were going to do or things that they were going to look into. So I think, you know, just starting small within your commission to kind of figure out what you want to do is very important. And I always tell people to look at your master plan as well. Master plans in communities are required to have a natural and cultural resources chapter. And those obviously master plans are usually done by a consultant or professional staff. So that can really be a great place for you to start thinking about a preservation plan, thinking about being a little more proactive with your preservation activities in your community.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. That's such great advice. Thank you so much. You know, I agree. It seems like, as I said, so much of what we do is really reactive. But just like you said, even like a 2-page document of where you want to go or what you want to look at, it's something, and it kind of gives you a bit of a framework. But yes, I think especially over the past number of decades, we've realized that preservation, it's really not in a vacuum, it's not in a silo. And I think the next question actually deals with CPA, but with CPA, you realize how preservation can be tied into so many different facets of community planning and initiatives. So it's important to make those connections. So that's fantastic advice. Thank you. I just want to like grab that soundbite and just put it on our website. It's perfect. So we have a question from Medford. I manage the CPA program in Medford, and we have several CPA applications for historic preservation projects for city-owned buildings that do not already have preservation restrictions. We're struggling with how to protect the CPA investment, as it seems tricky to place restrictions on city property, as we need to find an entity to hold it and find a way to pay for it to pay for the ongoing expenses in perpetuity. What do other cities and towns do?
Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of communities struggle with, and I think it's more of an issue with the CPA legislation itself. We get these questions all the time, and we at MHC, we do have to review these restrictions. And so I know a lot of communities kind of struggle with what they are going to do with them. I don't have an answer to it. It is required by the CPA legislation. Maybe it's something that needs to be changed in the legislation. As in terms of holding it, local historical societies will hold them sometimes. We have one going through now that's going to be held by a local land trust, which is obviously not ideal, but it's still having someone hold that restriction. I don't think that we've found an answer to it. I don't know if the Community Preservation Coalition has found an answer to it, but it's, you have to see if you can find that local organization that would be willing to hold it. Or if there's an outside larger organization, then you probably need some kind of an endowment for them to hold it. So it's sort of a catch-22 either way. So unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for that one. But yeah.
I believe if you go to, preservation restrictions are a very challenging topic, but if you go to the Community Preservation Coalition's website, they do have a technical assistance data bank, and they do have a page that does talk about preservation restrictions. And I think it does offer some examples of what other communities have done. So if you want to go there and check that out, and if you have any other specific questions specifically related to PRs and CPA, the CPC staff, though small but very, very mighty, they'll try to assist you as best they can, and if not, they'll probably forward you on to Preservation Massachusetts and or Jenn. Yep. But I hope that was helpful. And someone asked, are there new funds available from CPA? Last year it was down. I do believe they DOR just released the match information. I think it's up somewhere around 34%. I think it was a big year.
It's 39.4% this year. So that was pretty exciting, I think, for a lot of the CPA communities to see that, because as the question said, has been down around 20-25%. So it's a lot higher this year.
Yeah, that was some good news that came out this week. So. Yep. Okay, so we just got a note from our friends out in Northampton. The class that Steve Moga brought was Cultural Landscapes and Historic Preservation at Smith College. So we were so glad that they were able to join, and best wishes to Steve and his class. And I think they found this really, really, really helpful. So thank you all. We hosted a class today. So that was 39%. Danielle Evans from Medford. It was a 39% match this year, which is really, really great. So just another, just kind of like out of curiosity, in terms of like, do you have one, I know you've only been on the job. It seems like you've been on the job for, so much longer because we've been sending so many people your way. But, in the first couple of months with getting used to this new role and drawing on your experience as a consultant and working for a city, I think you bring a really, awesome perspective and experience to this role. And I know your position is one that our organization works, very, very closely with. As a partner, you have all the regulatory expertise, and, we can do the advocacy. Is there any sort of like I don't want to say something as generic as goal, but any sort of like big goal or something that you want to see that you really kind of are excited to work on with the position, something you kind of want to grow, whether it's more guidebooks or more robust educational offerings? Do you have anything that you're kind of envisioning?
Yeah, and I think that kind of covers it, the education and guidebooks, because I see that as really the primary, purpose of my role is serving as, a place to educate these local commissions and local preservationists. So like I said, I'm adding some new workshops that we haven't done in the past. I'm looking for more guidebook topics to kind of see what commissions are looking for. I'm going to be updating our website to really make sure that we have everything up there and it can kind of be a real good source of information for local commissions. So I'm really just hoping to kind of be out there as much as possible, and providing all this information to commissions and making sure they know where they can look for different questions. For instance, the preservation briefs from the Park Service are one that I don't think a lot of people realize are out there, but they can be really helpful for commissioners, especially historic district commissions, when making decisions about treatments to buildings. So I think just providing that information to commissions and helping to educate them is kind of really one of the real goals and purposes of my position here.
And because so many commissioners and local advocates, they're volunteers, they're not professionals, so they may not necessarily have like the formal education like that you do. So being able to provide them as much information and connecting the dots as much as possible. Awesome. And I know that in the past we've hosted some things on our website, so it'd be fantastic to be able to update, and if everything's on the MHC website, just to be able to have that clearinghouse to be like, you need this information, this is where you can go. Fantastic. Oh, now we have a question about do you have any suggestions on ways to recruit new members and build local historic commissions?
I guess again, just kind of getting the commission out there, making your place in the community known. I know here in Westboro recently, over the past few years, we've actually gotten members because our commission members have been involved in different boards and different issues within the community. And that's like other, appointed town boards. And then people were like, oh, I'm actually really interested in this. And so I'd like to join the historical commission and do this more. So again, I think really putting your commission out there as much as possible, kind of getting yourself in the news, making your presence known, working with the other boards in the community is a really great way to kind of sort of recruit new members and get new people interested in the historic preservation world.
Wonderful. Can you speak a little bit about using Macross Maps for those who may not know about it? It's a really powerful tool, and I know we had a presentation at the statewide conference back in September on it, and it was just amazing. It is a powerful tool. Can you talk a little bit about that as a great resource for commission members?
Yeah, I love Macross Maps. I use it all the time. I highly recommend that folks get familiar with it. It's a great way to kind of get that 30,000 foot view of your community and see where things have been inventoried in your community, where you have different historic districts, National Register districts, and then also it's a great way to kind of quickly link to the inventory forms and look at what's going on in your community. I've been incorporating it into my presentations because I don't think a lot of people are aware of it as they are of Macross itself. So I try and really push it and make folks aware of it because it is kind of a great way to access the information that we have on Macross in a different form. And I will say, as a quick update from MHC, we are working on a new version of Macross that will be, it's a lot more user-friendly, I will say that. I know Macross right now is a bit clunky and a bit hard to get through. It's a little more like sort of Amazon, where the search results will kind of filter as you click the different options on the side, rather than just searching and then going to a results page. We're hoping to get it out sometime this fall, but I'm not sure if that's still planned right now. But it is in the works, and it will be a lot more user-friendly in the future. But that and Macross Maps are really great tools for communities, and Macross Maps too, especially if you're working on preservation planning. It's a great place to start because again, it gives you kind of a clear overview of your community and what's going on and what you've done in the past already.
Fantastic, and that's exciting news about an update to Macross. Wow, so you heard it here first, folks. That's great. Be excited to share that when that officially goes live. And yes, Macross Maps is just an incredible tool. I think it was Anne Marie did a presentation. I don't think it was a preservation conversation, or maybe, but we do have a recording where she actually kind of walked people through how to use Macross Maps, and that can be found on our preservation conversations page. That's right. Thank you, Stacia. It was the Western Mass Historic Commissions Coalition hosted the introduction to Macross Maps, so that is available on our website. On Preservation Massachusetts website. It's a fantastic resource and it's great. So super excited for the new Macross to come out. Can't wait to see how that's going to work, because that's something we use all the time. There's even we have a special Macross link button in our advocacy database just because it makes things so much easier. So yeah, thank you. So any other last minute questions? I know we're kind of getting to about 45 minutes in. Not really seeing any, but so we knew this was going to be a little more informal, but we just thought it would be a wonderful way to get to know Jenn a little more in her new role, and now that she's had some time to get adjusted, and then you will be inundated with all sorts of emails and questions from everybody who is on this call and going forward. But I just can't thank you enough, Jenn, for doing this. I know it's a busy time of the year, but I think it's important that when we see an email or a name on a website, just being able to have, be able to put a face to that email, and people knowing a little bit more about what you're doing at MHC, and the different questions that you can help answer, but also kind of where you're looking to go. So it's exciting. We're so happy for you in this new role, and look forward to us personally working with you in the future. And I'm sure that everybody on the call or on the Zoom feels the same way. So everybody saw Jenn's contact information. If you didn't see it, you can send me an email, and I will be sure to pass along her email. But I think that's about it. So thank you all for attending on this beautiful Thursday. I think it's probably the last nice day of the year. So if you can, get outside today. This will be recorded. It should be up on our YouTube page and our website probably by tomorrow. But if anyone has any additional questions that pop up after, you can always email them to me and I'll pass it along to Jen, or just email Jen directly. But thank you so very much, everybody. Thank you, Jen, for giving of your time and your expertise. And we all look forward to working with you.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Right. Wonderful. And we hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday a week from today. So have a wonderful day, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.